Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope everyone's doing well. So I'm going to dive right into my presentation. So as mentioned, my name is Michelle, and I've dedicated the majority of my career to understanding betrayals in couple relationships. And today we're going to be talking about a specific type of betrayal experience that can happen in our relationship that's called an attachment injury. So by the end of my talk today, my hope is that you will really be able to understand what an attachment injury is, recognize if one has occurred in your relationship and how this can impact your mental health as well as the functioning of your relationship, including your sexual satisfaction. And finally, I will end my presentation by discussing ways that we can overcome and heal from an attachment injury if one has occurred in our relationship. So we all know that our romantic partners are incredibly important people in our lives. They can be considered what we call a primary attachment figure, or a person that we deeply trust to be there for us when we really need their support and their care. And we also expect that our partners will help us grow as individuals, that they will provide us with a secure base from which we can explore our world, our individuality, and they will really help us become the people that we want to be. And research has consistently shown that how happy we are and how secure we feel in our romantic relationships is associated with how well we are doing with our mental health and with our physical health. And sexual satisfaction, which essentially refers to how we feel about the positive and negative aspects of our sex life, or how we evaluate the pros and cons of our sex life, is an important factor that contributes to relationship happiness and to personal well-being. Because being sexually satisfied in our relationship not only encourages intimacy, trust, and emotional connection with our partner, but it also increases our self-esteem and essentially just makes us feel good about ourselves and about our relationship. Importantly, though, what makes for a satisfying sex life can vary tremendously between individuals and between couples. And so navigating our sexual relationships is not always an easy thing to do. And while the majority of people report generally being satisfied with their sex life, it's not a small minority that don't. In an international survey, for example, that was conducted with over 1,000 participants, about 1/3 of respondents indicated that they were dissatisfied with their sex life. And this has prompted researchers to really try to understand why that might be. What contributes to being satisfied or dissatisfied with our sex life? Because answering this question can really help us devise ways to improve how satisfied people are with their sex life and ultimately improve how well they feel and how good they feel in their relationships. Now, one thing that can affect our level of sexual satisfaction has to do with our attachment style, or what we call our attachment orientation. And this refers to how secure or insecure people feel in their close relationships. Now, there are two dimensions to insecure attachment that are called attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance. And people can be higher on one dimension and lower on the other, or they can be high on both dimensions or low on both dimensions. And generally speaking, people who are low on both attachment anxiety and avoidance are considered to have a more secure attachment style. And they tend to have a positive view of themselves as someone who is lovable and who is worthy of being loved, as well as a positive view of their partner as someone that they can trust and depend on to be there for them when they really need it. People who are higher on the anxiety dimension, however, they tend to be terribly afraid that their partner will reject them or abandon them, whereas people who are higher on the avoidance dimension tend to be really uncomfortable with intimacy and being emotionally close or vulnerable with other people, including with their romantic partners. And what the research tells us is that the more a couple is secure, so the more attachment security there is in both partners of the couple, the more they report a satisfying sexual relationship. Now, sometimes though, a specific event or transgression happens in our relationship that completely changes how secure we feel, or actually confirms how insecure we feel in our relationship. And this is what we call an attachment injury. Now, an attachment injury is a relationship trauma that involves deep feelings of betrayal or abandonment that can occur when our partner completely shatters our expectation that they will be there for us and care for us when we really need them, like instances of infidelity, threatening separation or divorce, or lying about something significant like a financial loss, or, just really letting us down or abandoning us when we're facing a tough time. Now, to really understand what an attachment injury is, it's important to know that the specific details of what happened matter a bit less than what it means for the partner who feels injured, what it means for them emotionally, for their sense of someone who is lovable, for their trust in their partner, and for their sense of safety in their relationship. Infidelity, for example, is often considered a clear-cut example of what an attachment injury is, and it is a big one. It can be a very big one, but infidelity doesn't always cause an attachment injury, depending on the emotional and relationship context in which it occurs. In my research, for example, I once had a participant who was having quite a lot of trouble dealing with finding out that her husband had had an affair. Now, when I asked her if she had ever experienced something like that before in another relationship, she told me of an old boyfriend who many years ago had also cheated on her. But when that happened, she laughed and sort of said, "Go figure," rolled her eyes, and then just left the relationship. And so I asked her, well, what makes this time different? And she replied to me, well, I knew that guy, that old guy, or my ex-boyfriend, that wasn't the love of my life. This was my husband. Plus, I had just lost my job. I was feeling really down on myself already. And I find out that my husband, of all people, the man I chose to spend the rest of my life with, cheated on me. I was devastated. And so this highlights a very critical piece of understanding what is an attachment injury. These injuries, they tend to happen, or they can be most damaging when they do happen, when we are feeling vulnerable, when we need our partner's care and our partner's support, and we find out or we feel like they have betrayed us or that they have abandoned us. So becoming new parents, experiencing a death or a loss in the family, immigrating to a new country or relocating for work or school related reasons, receiving a physical or mental illness diagnosis, and even the pandemic that we've all been experiencing for the last 2 years, these are all situations that can lead to these situations of vulnerability, of stress, or of need for support that can lead to feelings of betrayal or abandonment if one partner feels like the other is completely unavailable to them or unresponsive to their needs. Now, I want to emphasize something really important. An attachment injury happens to the couple, and so it can have really negative impacts on both partners. So for the partner who feels injured, an attachment injury can trigger this deep sense, these deep feelings of fear and of helplessness. And what the research tells us is that sometimes it can be experienced like something that is traumatizing, where the memory of the attachment injury and the emotions that are associated with it can be re-experienced and relived in a very vivid and a very intense way, as if it was happening all over again. And this can lead certain people to experience symptoms, psychological symptoms that are commonly associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, for example, intrusive or unwanted thoughts and images about what happened, or avoiding things that remind us of what happened. Many people might also report this overwhelming fear or hypervigilance that it's going to happen again in the future, which can lead them to experience uncontrollable anxiety and worry. They might report physical symptoms like their mind is racing and their heart is pounding and their palms are sweaty, like a panic feeling. Some people also report feeling great sadness and grief, or depression, feelings of shame and embarrassment. And all of this pain that surrounds the injury can really make it difficult for people who feel injured by their partner to forgive their partner. And this sort of difficulty forgiving also contributes to difficulties in the relationship or to conflict in the relationship, and also can even more negatively impact their mental health. As for the partner who committed the injury, they might experience tremendous guilt and shame and humiliation for what they've done. And this might underlie for some a tendency to become defensive or to minimize their actions when they're confronted by their partner. They might be unaware that they have so deeply hurt their partner. And so when they do become aware of it, they're overwhelmed with remorse or sadness that they have difficulty expressing in a way that's well received by their partner. They might also feel desperate or exasperated, as if they've apologized 1,000 times and tried everything to make it better, but nothing seems to work. They might even be experiencing their own emotional pain or mental health struggle that played a role in why the injury happened in the first place. And they might also experience difficulty sharing this experience with their partner. And so what ends up happening is that an attachment injury ends up anchoring itself in the couple's relationship experience. These injuries either confirm or redefine the relationship as unsafe and increase each partner's sense of insecurity. And when couples can't repair the injury and rebuild trust in their relationship, they can get stuck in this attack, pursue, and withdraw, defend relationship cycle, where the injured partner might constantly bring up what happened to demonstrate how hurt they are or to punish their partner. This can provoke their partner to emotionally withdraw or respond with defensiveness, which will then provoke the injured partner to attack or pursue more, and the injuring partner to withdraw or defend more, in what seems to be this never-ending cycle that really contributes to escalating the relationship conflict. And so although we knew as researchers and therapists, we knew how an attachment injury can create such a dark cloud over the relationship, we still didn't really know how experiencing an attachment injury was associated with people's levels of sexual satisfaction. And so this is what we set out to look at in our research, where we expected that the more severely a person perceives the injury to be, the less sexually satisfied they would be. And we were also interested in exploring, what are the key elements, the key ingredients that need to be considered for really understanding this link between the more severe I perceive the injury to be and the lower my sexual satisfaction. How can we understand? What are the factors that can help us understand this association? And so we surveyed 145 individuals who reported that they had experienced an attachment injury in their relationship, and they identified as having been injured by their partner. And they completed questionnaires online on how severely they perceived the injury to be, on their psychological well-being related to the injury, on how much they had forgiven their partner, and on their level of sexual satisfaction. And what we found was, not only did we confirm that there was an association between the perceived severity of the injury and sexual satisfaction, such that an attachment injury that was viewed as having a more severe impact on the relationship was associated with less sexual satisfaction. We also found two key ingredients that can really help us to understand this link. So people who viewed the attachment injury as being more severe also reported more symptoms related to stress, related to the injury, like intrusive thoughts and images, avoidance of reminders of the injury, depressed mood, and higher anxiety. And they also reported less forgiveness towards their partner, which in turn were related to lower sexual satisfaction. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if you've experienced an attachment injury in your relationship, the more severely you think the injury impacted your relationship, your sense of trust and security in your partner, the more you might experience psychological distress that's related to the injury, and the less likely you are to really forgive your partner, which together might make you feel less sexually satisfied in your relationship. Now, unfortunately, though, we didn't have the same data on we didn't collect or have the same data on the partner who committed the injury. So we don't know if or how these results apply to their experience. This is actually part of additional research questions that we're currently looking into. So now that we understand what an attachment injury is and how it can affect us and our relationship, what do we do? How do we recover from this? What I really want to point out here, and what's really important to note, is that experiencing an attachment injury, even something like infidelity, does not automatically have to mean the end of the relationship. Now, for some couples it does. For some couples it signifies the end, and that's okay. But for many others it doesn't, and that's also okay. And if you do experience an attachment injury, if we do experience an attachment injury in our relationship, luckily there are a few ways that we can overcome these events and improve our relationship, improve our mental health and our relationship functioning. And one of these ways is through couples therapy. So one of the most successful couples therapies is called emotionally focused therapy for couples, or EFT for short. EFT is strongly based on the idea that unacknowledged or unmet emotional needs and insecure attachment is really at the heart of couple conflict and of psychological difficulties. And so an EFT therapist really focuses on helping the couple to reestablish a secure attachment bond, which in turn will help increase their mental, physical, and relationship health. Now, within this approach is something called the attachment injury resolution model, which is a therapeutic model that was specifically designed for couples who've experienced an attachment injury. And the goal of the attachment injury resolution model is to help the couple process the hurt and the pain that's associated with the injury. And the therapist's role is really to get each partner to listen to understand, and to really empathize with the other's experience and perspective, in order to help the injured partner come to a place where they can forgive their partner and help the couple eventually reconcile from the injury. And now this reconciliation, or resolving the attachment injury, then helps to restore the couple's sense of security, trust, and connection. And this approach has had quite a good success rate for helping couples recover from an attachment injury, as well as improving their overall relationship. Now, if you don't want to participate in couple therapy, some couples do, some couples don't. It's to each their own. There are several individual therapy approaches that have proven to be very useful to help heal from an attachment injury. There is emotionally focused individual therapy, which is similar, emotionally focused individual therapy, which is similar to EFT for couples, but is modified or tweaked slightly to apply more for the individual. And essentially, there are many approaches to therapy that can help people who are struggling with an attachment injury to make sense of what happened, and to help them move on, and to help them really make peace with the injury and reestablish their sense of self and their sense of worth. And finally, there are other things that people can do to recover from an attachment injury that don't necessarily involve going to therapy at all. And this is outlined in Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, and specifically in the chapter 5, or conversation 5, called the Forgiving Injuries chapter. Now, to summarize quickly the steps that are outlined in this chapter, for people who feel injured by their partner, for example, it's important that they acknowledge the hurt and that they share this experience with their partner openly and honestly. Now, people might say something like, I felt like you had just disappeared. I felt so alone. I really needed you to be there for me. And I felt really let down and hurt, like you had abandoned me. It's not an always easy thing to do, but it is an important thing to do because it can allow the partner who hurt the other to start seeing what happened from a different perspective, or from the perspective of the injured partner in terms of how it affected them on an emotional level. And for people who feel injured, it's also important to be open to really listening to their partner's perspective with empathy and with understanding, even if it's something that they might not want to hear or that they don't like. Sometimes it can happen that the partner isn't aware of the extent to which they deeply hurt their partner, and it might be really unsettling for them to learn this. They also might have their own view and their own interpretation of what happened. So it's important to consider that and to be open to the perspective of the other. Now, for people who have injured their partner, it's important for them to not only express their own perspective of what happened openly and honestly and from an emotional space, but also to acknowledge their responsibility for having hurt their partner and to sincerely apologize. Again, this isn't always easy, but it is also very important because it can allow the injured partner to start to feel ready to ask for the comfort and care that they needed at the time that the injury happened, but felt like they didn't get. And an apology, particularly a very sincere apology about hurting the other, will help to act as sort of an antidote or a cure for the injury, and can bring the partner who feels injured to a space where they can really forgive their partner. And this can help the couple to move on and to reconcile. Now, I know I've made it sound a lot easier said than done, and I realize that this can be a very difficult conversation to have, but the chapter in Sue Johnson's book called Forgiving Injuries really guides the couple through the necessary steps for how to have this conversation and ultimately heal from an attachment injury together. And just a sort of side note to this, the outline of this conversation in this book is also what the therapist, an EFT therapist who's using the attachment injury resolution model, it's also sort of the similar guidelines that the therapist will help the couple go through in couple therapy. So it's all sort of based on the same idea. So to summarize the main take-home messages, an attachment injury is a specific type of relationship betrayal that can be big and obvious, like an affair, or more subtle breaches of trust, like feeling abandoned when going through a difficult time. They are these unacknowledged hurts, the elephant in the room that colors the relationship in a negative light. And if they're not resolved, they can have really negative consequences on our mental health, on our relationship health, including our sexual satisfaction, which is an important component to our relationship health. But luckily, experiencing this type of event doesn't mean that the relationship is necessarily doomed. They are events that can be healed, and many couples can recover and come out stronger in the end. So thank you very much for being with me today for my presentation. I'm happy to provide more information and more resources if you need. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or any concerns. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.